So I'm sitting here with Alex Portis, the man behind the project Muses, and I'm just going to jump right in and ask these questions that I'm sure many people want to know. Now,
Sure.
for me, the first thing that stands out when looking at the album cover is that statement that you have on there that says "From the mind of Alex Portis," and I know personally that you were adamant about having that in there. So take us into your mind when coming up with the concept for this tape that you're putting out.
For the From the Mind of Alex Portis thing in particular, that was something I would see on movie posters, and I remember it stood out particularly on one of the Jordan Peele movies, and it was like from the mind of Jordan Peele,
Yeah.
whichever movie it was, and it was like that jumped out to me, and I thought, wow, if there's ever a time when I'm kind of at the lead of something, that would be a tagline or something that I think could go on there. The project itself, I've recently, ironically enough, found like some notes I had made for it. And it was like I had Alex led female project, was like half of it, and I had like some names on there. And then it was Super Saiyans 2 was next to it. And then on the bottom was like a tape with all three of us. And I kind of remember when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, if I were to do a project like that, what if it was just named after those specific people that were
Mm-hmm.
inspiring the tracks? And so when I went to kind of, you go on the hunt for samples or ideas or inspiration, I found a pretty good well of stuff, and you know
Mm-hmm.
how that goes. And so I knocked out like at least three outlines in one day, and one of those outlines was what later becomes the Zendaya beat.
Okay.
So, then things took a lot of twists and turns, and here we are now. But that was where it came from. Just me writing down ideas, and one of them was Alex-led female project.
And
And
what
it
year was that
went from there.
again?
That was 2018.
Okay. All right. So, and we'll come back and talk about that process of how we went from 2018 to getting to today in 2021. But
Got
before
it.
we get there, can you break down the title Muses? You know, people see the names because you have the track list that was released and it has all the different names. So
Yeah.
people see some familiar names and then there's some famous people on there. And like people are naturally going to gravitate towards this idea that you're being reckless. This is your tell-all, type of tape. But what does it
That's funny.
really mean for someone to serve as a muse for you, and why was that such a fitting title for this tape?
Well, first off, part of why it hasn't been out yet is because I know how it would come across, especially among my close friends.
Yeah.
Of course, I know how that would come across. But the inspiration for all of these range from a number of things. It's some of them are a specific moment, and some of them are years of a friendship or a relationship. It's a number of different things and everything in between.
Mhm.
Um, it was when I finally got to the place where I knew I was going to use the names idea. What I didn't want was to like go out and start like trying to create moments. So that's why I
Mm.
wanted them all to come natural, because I know myself, and I knew like, oh wow, this worked for this. What if I go have a different experience? I didn't want to start doing that just to come home and make music. I wanted it to all
Mm.
happen naturally, and that's why it could like I said, it could range from any just one little like one song in particular is based on just a 10-minute conversation, and another song is based on almost 15 years of friendship. So it,
I
it
like that.
can, yeah, it could be all of it. um you know Muses in particular, the term, it's there's it the clip I found for the intro kind of explains that a little better, and I don't want to give it all away, but it's just more about letting yourself be led by whatever is inspiring you, as opposed to a lot of times making music now. you get to a certain level of skill and you need to be able to, like, somebody asks for something, you want to be able to make it. And that's good to have that, and you want to be trained for it. But somewhere along the lines, I realized I wasn't in the same creative space that I used to be in. And letting these muses inspire me, that took me to a creative place that I hadn't been in quite some time.
And man, you said a lot of good things that I wish I can have time to unpack all of them. But
Gotcha.
just as an artist, when you're talking about, being led, because I think you mentioned like you didn't want to kind of force, certain songs, force certain beats and things like that. So when you were in that process of creating these tracks and being led, so did you have like a picture of somebody,
Yeah.
like in the lab, and then you was like, you know what, I'm about to try to make something that reminds me of this person? Or was it you made the beat and then you was like, you know what, this reminds me of this person?
Right. So both things happened. There's some where I legitimately, something happened and then I came right home. I put them on the screen, set the vibe, and I made the beat. There's others, and I think I posted one time where I had like the people were like on the screen as I was creating. Other times I've made something, and then as I listened to it more and more, whoever came to mind, I was like, wow. Then I kind of listened to it with their picture up or thinking about them, and then I made additions to it or changed things based on how it made me feel under those circumstances. So it was both. So it's kind of, I wouldn't know what percentage to say for that, but both things happen where, okay, I want to make a beat that based on this person, and this ended up fitting.
And I think that's why this tape is going to be very interesting, because normally, like if you're listening to something, you don't know what's been inspiring the producer or the artist in that process.
Right.
But now you got like names,
Yes.
and then even from some of your IG videos I've seen, like you in the lab and you got the lights low, got a candle lit, got the LEDs on full display, and then you had that picture on the screen. So it's like, as a person watching, it's like, okay, I'm getting the audio input, but then also I get this visual of what's actually inspiring you to do what you're doing. So I guess, how was it, because you do know so many people and like you are in, I'm sure you have a lot of friends who could serve as muses. How
Yeah.
was it for you to kind of narrow it down for this tape?
That was tricky. Once I really got going, which is somewhat recently. I mean, I've been collecting a lot over the years, but in the past 6 months or so, like it kind of, once I knew it was closer to a reality, I kind of kicked things up a notch. But that was tough, and how it is with me and some of my female friends, especially. It was pick this person, pick that person. Like I got scolded the other day because someone wasn't on. They didn't see themselves on the list, so they had an issue with that. So that was a little tricky. But I wanted it to be as genuine as possible, and I can't rule out a Muses 2 based on how this ended up going. I can't rule that out. But what's on here now was just what I think worked for this one. It ended up, and again, as as we've done a few of these, you can kind of either go for like just everything is the best thing, or like you want to make it flow a particular way, tell a story. Sometimes you luck into either one. And this one, the songs that are on here, they all ended up fitting in a way where I couldn't have added or taken anything off.
And
So
see, just because I know you personally, and I've witnessed you in this process before in the past, and I know that you are a borderline perfectionist,
yeah,
so how
yes.
was it for you to even say, you know what, these are all the tracks that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop right here, and then I'm gonna work on trying to get this out to the masses instead of going back and keep adding.
Yeah, that was tricky, and it's because I understand how that can have benefits, and you could just keep working forever. At some point, I knew I had to cut it off, but at the same time, I know that at the last minute, you could make something that could steal the show. And so that's entirely possible. And so once I made one about a month ago or so, I was like, okay, this is it. If I don't stop here, it's never gonna come out. Like, I'm just gonna keep finding a reason, or this will replace that, because and that one in particular knocked like two off. Like, that one ended up knocking two away because it didn't end up fitting as well as I thought they would. And so once I got there, then it was like, okay, I started listening to the songs even before they were finished, because this is one, and this is kind of unusual. There's 15 on there. There were probably only, until about 3 weeks ago, there were probably only 7 that were totally done. In the past 3 weeks, all of them got like finishing touches, and they were made to kind of even more so fit the project. And so I started listening to them, even just the ones that were snippets or just kind of bare. I started listening to them, and I decided the order. So I ended up deciding the order like weeks ago, and then I kept listening to them and listening to them, and then as I added to it, I would update the playlist. Kept adding to them, I would update it, and I kept listening. Okay, this actually should go here. But yeah, and again, that's very different for me. Things not being mostly done, but that's just how it went this time, which is why this one is kind of a unique project for me, and not just because I'm taking a little more of the lead than I normally would.
And a lot of people don't understand, what all goes into the preparation of putting a tape out, because you do want to have something that's very cohesive and,
Right.
moves from track to track kind of seamlessly.
Yeah.
Now, also in terms of like the process of putting something together, you've mentioned a few times this project was started, or at least the initial inception of the idea was in 2018. But then you said it really became like a reality about 6 months ago. So take us through that process of 2018, when you first got the idea, to now with it finally getting ready to be released.
Gotcha. So in 2018, when I wrote those notes, and then I ended up finding the sample for what's the Zendaya beat, it was like 2 weeks later, my grandmother passed away. Then a few weeks after that, my grandfather. A couple months after that, then my father did. So I got, obviously life happened, and I got sidetracked, and my creativity was low, and which I think is understandable, of course. And so when I was ready to tap back into working on music, I wasn't necessarily ready to do something where I needed to take the lead on, which is why Super Saiyans 2 ended up being the next project. It was easier for like a 50-50 thing, as opposed to me doing the heavy lifting.
Shout out to Phil, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say enough about that. We could have a whole nother interview just about him. But that, and then I got into that, and that was a distraction of sorts too. I just got fully wrapped into that. I knew I still wanted to do this project, but it got on the back burner. Then, again, as you know, once you get a certain amount into a project, then that's kind of all you can do, all you can work on. And that's how I went with that, which, and I think that turned out very well. And so then once I kind of got back around to it, and the ideas were flowing again, shortly after that, the pandemic hits. And so the pandemic hitting, it made me work a little less, because you're not out getting inspired by a lot of things. You're not seeing people I'm not able to collab with you guys as much as I would normally. And it became tough to get inspired there. But, that actually ended up forcing me almost into this project.
Yeah.
I needed the inspiration, and it made me think, oh, here's a way for me to still be inspired, do those things, setting the mood, putting the people on the screen. Especially ones where I'm going to have to kind of lead the beats a lot. And at some point, I'll go into a little more in depth about how me and Q especially work and why this was a lot different this time. For me to get inspired, I needed something to drive it. And this turned out to be one of the best things that could happen.
And once again, you said a few different things that I wish I can go back and hit on every single one of them. But I'll go with that last thing that you said. You said you needed something to be inspired. Now, I just know, just because I've worked with you for so many years, like when you first started, you started using samples, and the samples was something that inspired you to create a full beat. But now what you're doing is like you have these images of individuals, or like these relationships that you were talking about that inspire that creativity. And I think, just a side note, that's one of the greatest things about art and music and those things like that, those artistic ways that we can express ourselves, because it allowed you to be distracted from some of those, things that were going on personally in your life. And then it allows you to kind of to divert that energy into something, creative. And it's really interesting to me that even though you had this idea back in 2018, that you didn't just let it go, because I think it would have been easy to say, okay, well, maybe that was just a good idea for that time, but it's not going to come to fruition. But I think that kind of shows how much these people kind of have inspired you over the years.
Yes, absolutely. And I probably didn't even realize it at first. It was always in the back of my mind, but there was part of me that just kind of thought, I'll get to it when I get to it, or, you just kind of, you do other things, life happens, of course, but it just kept, when it would come back around in my head, I'd be like, man, oh, this would be crazy what if it was this person, what if these two names were back to back on the track list? What if, so many things would come into my mind, and I just kept collecting them. And I have, again, I have notes from way back then. Like, I have a notebook now that has 3 different pages of all the iterations this went through, the beats that were in play once upon a time, the names that were in play once upon a time. And I just kept getting back to it. And again, the pandemic really was like, okay, here we are. And I did a number of beats during that. And then about 6 months ago, it was like, okay, this can really be something. But yeah, it does. The people that are on here, especially the ones I personally know, they definitely all mean a lot to me.
Okay. And you you mentioned a few times about kind of being at the forefront with this project, and you said after the loss of those family members that you didn't want to do anything that required you to do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right. Yes.
And personally, you've normally worked with a team. I heard those other 2 guys that you work with are kind of good guys as well. So
very much so.
So how was that for you? One, branching off onto doing something on your own, but then also how important was it for you to keep those guys involved with this process as well?
Again, this is probably gonna end up being a long answer, so I'm trying to keep it as brief as I can. First of all, doing something where I'm kind of the lead or the middleman is it's totally out of my comfort zone. I'll say it for sure. I love the fact that I'm part of a team and with people that are extremely talented. That's great for me. And no matter what, as you know, at any step of the way, I'm always bouncing ideas off of you guys constantly. And it's not that I don't just believe in myself. It's just that I understand where collaboration can take you. I've seen it. I know that I have a place in that as well, but I know one of you guys can have just a crazy idea, and it's something I never even imagined, or I never even looked at it that way, and it takes it to a whole different level. So for sure, you guys are going to be involved in the process no matter what. What I was saying about, and this is where I can kind of say that thing about me and Q now, next May we'll have been making beats for 15 years together, which is crazy. So
Jeez.
we, it's kind of down to a science now. It's a lot of things we can create, and almost sometimes we don't even have to talk to each other. It can kind of we kind of know, and even if we do make some beats on our own, they almost just sound like we made them together anyway, because we've kind of become that seamless in a way. And what was different about this is a lot of times, we count it as a collab no matter what, whether it's 90-10, 60-40, 50-50. And it can go either way anytime. But no matter what, if it's up to me, I'm always going to try to nudge Q into leading a little bit because I think we're at our best when you and Q are in a zone. I feel like I can be the chameleon at any time. I can kind of jump into you guys' worlds, do whatever. So, and I always felt like that was my strongest skill for the team. But this here, where it's like me with the main ideas and concepts, that was tricky for me, especially starting a lot of these things. And which is, again, why I needed certain inspiration. And that's where the Muses came in. The way for me to get into that creative space was to use these things to get me there. And it kind of, I'll admit, I'm the type of person that sometimes I need a little push. And that is what would happen. And so it allowed me to, without, both of my guys with me all the time, it allowed me to be able to have all these different ideas, create these different concepts, and kind of tap into a little bit different of a bag than I ever had.
Yeah. And that little, and for people who don't know, because since I've been there a lot of times, man, you and Q do have this unspoken connection. And I've witnessed it plenty of times where you was just no, Q, at least to go and then Quinn's okay, and he's on the keys.
Right.
Exactly what you said. Or you'd that's not the right key. It needs to go a little bit lower. So, I mean, that connection has definitely always been there. You guys are like a well-oiled machine in that case. And I knew for myself personally, when you put out a project, especially like this, since I love that R&B type of bag, I was like, I'm gonna make sure I'm on there somehow, some way.
Oh yeah, you're definitely on here. You definitely are.
So yeah, I'm trying to think what I was about to go from there.
That's funny. No, it for sure. Again, it was definitely, and of course, I mean, there's the 15. Again, you're involved in one. I mean, Q is still ended up involved in however many, but this time, on every single time I did start them, which is on any of our other projects, it could have went either way anytime. This one for sure, I had all these concepts, and then it was because I remember, even last summer when we were finishing up the Kobe tape, that was the first time I saw Q in months. Pandemic was March, and we put that out in August, I think. I think I saw Q the week of my birthday in June, and then we didn't see each other again until we were finishing up the Kobe tape. We were doing back and forth at first, but then it was finally okay, we're gonna have to mash up and figure this. To finish a project, it was too much left on the table, so we had to do it. And so we finished that up, and I kind of was like, oh well, we wrapped it up. I was like, well, hey, listen to these 4 or 5 joints, and it was 4 or 5 that almost all of them are on the project now. And he was just how do you have this stuff? Where have you been hiding these joints at? I'm like, yeah, I've kind of been working a little bit. And so, he touched up a couple right then on the spot. And, then I knew like, okay, cool. I can, come up with these ideas. And then when I do need something, I know Q will come in and kind of, give it some life if it needs, or, whatever it needs to be. So that was an interesting thing that happened. And that's over a year ago now itself. So it was at a different stage even a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking the track that I submitted, I think I sent that to you over a year ago as
Yep.
well, which
Yep.
just shows like how much time goes into a project like this, especially like you said, Porter, since we weren't all able to be in the same room together and
Right.
produce like we normally would. So, and I'm sure this is like asking a parent who's their favorite kid. Do you have a favorite track on the tape?
That's very tough. And me and Q joke about this a lot too. Our favorite is never anyone else's. Like, people have favorites on all these prizes, and we're like, you like that one? Like, so you never know how certain things will hit certain people. That's tough. And I know you haven't heard it all either.
I have not.
Right, which is also a different element compared to how this normally goes.
Yeah.
Man, it's tough, especially just to pick one. But I won't pick a favorite, because they're kind of all my favorite at different times. I will say one that I think captures the inspiration the most is Tisha. That track in particular captures what I was going for in the most direct manner. I would say that for sure. The one that is the Instagram chicks, that's close to my, I don't want to say favorite, but that one is a special one. Also, I wish I could kind of go into more detail. That one for sure. And what's another? Both. Yeah, see, I'll just start naming everyone. I'll leave it at that. I will say the Tisha one, that one captures that moment very well. And the Instagram chick one, that's a special one as well. I'll say that. But they're all my favorites, especially like this past week since I've been able to listen to it. Mm-hmm. Each day something different is my favorite.
Yeah, and I'm kind of jealous of Q in that aspect, since he mixes all the tracks.
Right.
Man, so Q know all the tracks, and but I'm so excited to listen to it when it does get released, and I just want to put my headphones on and listen to it straight through. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of text messages from me that day,
for sure.
Because I'm going to be super excited. But with the so since we can't narrow it down to like a favorite track, I know just from all these previous projects that we've done together, is there one track on there that gave you a lot of problems? Like, because I know there's always one.
Man, you know what? The one, man, there's a couple that actually were tricky to finish. And a couple of them is because once I had like once I was pretty far in it, then like the pressure is on them. And now, you have to think about, especially the real people that like one can't just be the craziest track ever, and then the next person has a simple one. So I will say that I will say it was tricky to finish the one that's Cynthia, and that's because that was probably, I had made this outline a long time ago, but it just wasn't finished. Mm-hmm. And so I kept making things, and then I got back to it, then it was like, okay, now it's tape time, and it still wasn't done. The pressure was then on to finish it, and then also for it to, this is one of those people that probably would feel away if theirs wasn't a standout. So it was
right.
it was tricky to kind of get there, and I had to figure out a way to make it unique. And so the beat itself went through a few different iterations to whereas I wasn't in love with it until like now, where I like it, and it's a totally different style of beat than I normally do also. So that's probably why it was tricky. There's a lot of these, and you know how we are with creating the track list. There's a section that kicks off with the one you did and kind of ends with another interlude that those kind of feel away. Like you'll kind of notice how that goes. This one is like way different than even the other beats on the tape. It still fits as we do the things to make it fit. But that's why I said that one was tricky because it had to be kind of modified a few times before I was satisfied with it.
And that's in all the previous tapes that have been done, you've always served as like that executive producer role in arranging all the tracks. So I think that's an art in and of itself. And that takes that listener on that experience, the highs and the lows, and you're kind of controlling that like a puppet master per se.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
looking, since this is such a different type of tape for you and you are at the forefront, I want to look at something different, which is like marketing it, and promoting it. I think
Yeah.
that's something that is that something that's different for you, that did you have to kind of grow into that role for this specific tape?
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of these times, I mean, I know we do always do the light little promo and kind of do things. But this one, it especially because again, kind of, I'm not the lead singer normally. I don't ever, and that's not even something I desire to be. So it was tricky. I almost, for lack of a better term, I was getting a little shy about this one. So I'm glad. And we know, and I'm glad y'all pushed me a little bit in certain ways on this, and so I'm glad like this one does deserve the same way, and obviously it's different. Rest in peace, Kobe, of course. The same way that deserved special treatment, this one also deserves a little bit of special treatment compared to some of the other ones we've done. So yes, the cover and the things, especially the things I've asked you to help me with, that's been intentional for sure. This time needed those things.
So one of my last questions is, since you have a pretty extensive discography, I'm trying to think how many Basement Boys tapes there are. You got the tapes with you and Phil.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
it's a lot.
trying to count. That's at least 10, right?
Yeah, right. There's the 3 Welcome to the Basements. There's Unfinished Business, Summer Nights,
Winter Nights,
90s tape, 2 Super Saiyans, and the Kobe tape.
All right, so that's 10 projects.
So that's
So
10,
this will
and
be
then this will be the 11th project. Yeah.
Where does this project rank for you?
Man, this is the one question I knew was actually coming, so I was trying to think about it. I'm one of those people, I always hate when people try to declare something a classic too quickly. I think that's something that bothers me, and I never want to be that person, because I think time changes things. You hear it one day and it feels this way, and that could be things could get better or worse, I guess. Right now, it's definitely towards the top as far as my favorite. Like, if I'm just talking about my favorite, not being overly objective, it's towards the top, and I'm trying to like take myself out of it, but it is just, it's pretty good. We have some classic stuff. Summer Nights is always going to be right there. Welcome to the Basement 3. I'm not sure we'll ever all make beats that good together. There's certain things, all of them have their charm, but this is probably, and again, I can't wait till you hear it as well, but this is towards the top. It's in my favorites. It's probably in the top 3, I would say.
And I think it's not just the music, because it's also everything that you've went through putting this tape together. all the
Exactly.
inspiration, I'm sure,
Yeah.
factors into it. And
Mhm.
then from the, I think, 3 or 4 tracks that I have heard, it's
Yeah.
pretty fire.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I'm already knowing that you put some extra sauce on the ones that I haven't heard. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of my favorite tapes as well,
Awesome.
just because I love a concept tape. And I think
Yeah.
that's what like the Kobe one was that we talked about. And then like
Yes.
Welcome to the Basement 3, we had like we were kind of all together for that one. But
Yeah.
so
And that was even, especially after the Kobe tape. The Kobe tape, as great as that is, that put a lot of pressure for me on this one also because, and I kind of, with the Kobe tape, that ended up, to me, that is a classic because mixing that with all of those clips and the timing, that's just, that's as good as it gets almost. So on this one, I almost wanted everything to be narrated of some sort, right?
mm,
I thought about that at one time, whether it's, different movie clips, whatever. And of course, there's some of that here, as it always is. But the reason I didn't choose to put it on every single track, one, I think it would be tough. I think in some cases that would have limited the stories. I
mm,
felt like some of these I couldn't have found a clip that really captured how that person inspired me. I feel like that would have been tough. So
yeah.
on most of these, I felt like I needed to just make sure I did enough with the music to tell the proper story. And even if you don't get the story, you should be able to, it should set the proper vibe that you get like, okay, I see what they have. And I
Wow.
feel like that was something, and that was a tough decision. It's again, especially after the Kobe take worked so well, kind of being
Mm-hmm.
narrated the whole time. But I felt like, and that was part of the challenge. But I felt like that was the best way to go. And don't get me wrong, there's a movie clip for sure. There's a couple little skit/voicemails. It's there on a couple of them, but for the most part, I had to let the music tell the story.
And that's what I love about this tape, and that's why I'm so eager to hear it. Because you're requiring the listeners to be kind of intentional when they're listening to the tape to try to say like, okay, this is more up tempo song. So does that mean that this person, stimulates this type of reaction from Portis, or like, this one's more a little bit more mellow. Like I know him and this person, and I know that they've been friends for 15 plus years.
Right.
Like, how is he conveying that to us through music? I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
is there what would be the one thing that you want people who are listening to this tape to go into with? Like,
Um, that's interesting. I was not prepared for this one. I I would say again, and that this kind of piggybacks off what I just said. Just kind of, and I know it's going with an open mind is so cliche, but I think
right,
it's just look for the music is going to kind of set the stage each time. I think that I did at least a pretty good job of like, for the most part, I think almost right when all of them come on, even how the way I introed a lot of them sets the stage the right way. And so just kind of just let the way the tracks go, let that kind of just take you where it takes you, I would say.
it sounds like a lot of people are gonna be lighting some candles and firing up the LED lights.
And that's another thing. I do want to jump in with this. Not everything is just, candles and barefoot music on here. There's a couple bangers. Like nothing is, all of them, even some of the ones that are really mellow have a level, I gotta be me still. Like
Yeah.
no matter what, I still gotta be me.
No, I know
And
some of them people, and if the music is supposed to
exactly,
be,
right, exactly. So it's like I couldn't. Every single one just couldn't be, and I felt like that there needed to be, even though I did want them all to have a similar tone or feeling. it needed to have some variety of sorts, because I felt like everyone's attention spans are shorter now, and that was even tough. Letting it go all the way to 15 tracks, that was quite a bit, and some of them are short. It's interludes, and it's still not over. I think it's 45 minutes is the runtime, so it's still fairly short compared to a lot of things. But yeah, there's some bangers on there. There's gonna be joints people want to rap over. It's like they'll just think like you have to be tuned out to this one. It's still a what you would expect from a Basement Boys presentation.
You said no, not just because did you say Candles and Barefoot?
Yeah, right. It's not all of that. It's just, there's a couple of those there, but it's not just that.
We got some Candles and Casamigos tracks on there. It sounds like that.
There's a couple that are the direct result of a couple nights like those. That's for sure.
So just to wrap this up, you kind of hinted towards it a little bit earlier. So will there be a Muses 2?
Well, today, because now it's finally finished, it was the first time I even let myself think of that. And quickly, based on what's going on in my life currently, I realized like I could see 4 or 5 names that could be a big part of another story. So, it's in the back of my mind. It could be. Won't let it take 3 years, no matter what. But yeah, and again, and it won't be based. How this is received will just be what it is. Once it's out there, then it's just out there. And I think we kind of treat that like that with all the tapes. It'll do what it does. But for me personally, I can see certain stories developing that I may want to tell in this form again. But we'll see. So I will say it's a possibility that the idea is there, but we'll kind of see.
All right. So let the people know how they can receive or go listen to Muses.
So this is going to be our first project that should be on, knock on wood, all of the streaming services. So it should be able to go live on Apple Music, Tidal, YouTube Music, all of it at once. So, we normally always do the SoundCloud releases. I figured this was the time for us to kind of step into this realm. With the way everyone consumes music now, I felt like, it was no sense in having, I know most people have SoundCloud, but, if you could just go to what you normally go to, I felt like that would be easier. And so you should be able to get it everywhere very soon.
I hope so. So that way I can use it as some background music in my IG stories.
Gotcha.
So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, any last words for the people? Anything else you want to convey?
Man, I'm excited for this to be out. It's always like, you get it out there, then you like, sometimes you want to know what people are thinking, sometimes you don't, but this is one thing. It's been just in my mind for so long. I'm ready for people to hear it and kind of see, what I've been working on all this time, with all the snippets add up to like all of that. I'm ready. There's a few, like I've got messages from people like, how come you haven't finished the video from March Blase Blah? Like I go back to it and play it all the time. Like, is that going to be a song? It's like, there's people that do that. So there's a few on there that are like, hey, here's the song finally. So I'm glad for that. There's some people I'm going to directly send it to. So yeah, I'm ready for everybody to check it out.
All right. I'm excited too. I can't wait to hear it. And then to get some more in the future on future projects that you got cooking up. I'm excited about that as well. So make sure you go listen to Muses.
I'm glad we did this, man. I'm glad we did this.